Let me say this right now out of the gate because I know exactly who this episode is for. If you're a small business owner and you feel like sales are slow right now, you probably think you have a sales problem. You don't. You have a follow up problem. And weirdly enough, that's actually good news because sales problems feel big and scary and complicated and like you need some genius strategy or a new funnel or a rebrand or a new website or a new ad platform. No, follow up problems are boring and boring problems are fixable. Most small business owners I talk to think they need more leads. They think they need better marketing. They think they need a new offer or lower prices or get more aggressive. But when I actually look at their business, when I look at their phone, when I look at their inbox, when I look at their DMs, when I look at their text, they already talked to people who could have bought. They just stopped. They sent one message, maybe two, then nothing. Not because they didn't care, not because they're lazy, because life happened. And in small business, whatever isn't scheduled disappears. Let me tell you how I learned this the hard way. At Perchmer, we sell custom merch to other businesses. Shirts, hats, uniforms, swag, all that stuff. Boring on the surface, way more complicated in reality. Early on, I used to convince myself we needed more leads. So I'd do outreach. I'd send emails. I'd text people. I'd DM people on LinkedIn. I'd get a response. We'd go back and forth. They'd say something like, "This looks good. Let me think about it." Or "Circle back with me." Or "We're just slammed right now. Maybe next month." And I'd tell myself, cool, they know where to find me. Then I'd move on. Then 2 weeks later, I'd be stressed about sales and think, man, nothing is closing. And I'd blame the market or the economy or competition or prices. What I didn't want to admit is that I just disappeared. Here's the lie almost every small business owner believes. If they wanted it, they would have responded. That sounds reasonable. It also quietly costs people tens of thousands of dollars a year. Silence doesn't mean no. Silence means busy, distracted, forgot, not urgent yet. Your prospect didn't reject you. They just went back to their life. And unless you follow up, you vanish with it. The reason this happens isn't because you don't know better. It's because follow-up feels uncomfortable. You tell yourself things like, I don't want to bug them, or I already reached out, or if they're interested, they'll respond. What you're really saying is, I don't want to feel awkward. That's human. It's also expensive. There's an emotional side to this nobody talks about. When someone doesn't reply, your brain fills in gaps. You start making stuff up. They're not interested. I annoyed them. I look desperate. They probably hate salespeople. None of that is confirmed, but your brain treats it like fact. So you avoid following up, not because it doesn't work, but because it feels personal. And small business owners already have enough things that feel personal. Payroll feels personal. Client complaints feel personal. Bad reviews feel personal. You don't need one more thing poking at your ego. But here's the reframe that changed everything for me. Follow-up is not pestering. It's professionalism. You're not chasing. You're reminding. You're reminding them you exist. You're reminding them you're reliable. You're reminding them you care enough to circle back. In a world where most people disappear after one message, the person who follows up doesn't stand out as desperate. They stand out as dependable. Let me give you a real Perchmer example. We had a corporate client, multiple location company, uniforms for multiple teams, real money, real opportunity. We sent pricing. They said, looks good. Need to run this internally. Then silence. Old me would have waited. Me followed up. Not the next day, not checking in. I waited a few days and sent a simple message. Hey, quick note. Just wanted to make sure this didn't get buried. Happy to answer any questions. Nothing. A week later, I followed up again. Hey, we just wrapped up a similar order for another company with about the same headcount. Thought of you. Nothing. 2 weeks later, I followed up one more time. They replied. They apologized. They said it had been sitting in their inbox the whole time. We closed the deal. If I stopped after one message, that deal doesn't exist. Not because they said no, because I disappeared. Most sales don't happen on the first contact, or the second, or the third. They happen when timing improves, when urgency changes, when something jogs their memory. Follow-up doesn't force decisions. It catches people when they're ready. That's why I'll follow up later almost never happens, because later is vague. Later isn't on your calendar. Later isn't on your to-do list. Later gets eaten by fires and emails and employee questions. If follow-up doesn't have a place to live, it dies quietly. That's why most owners think they follow up more than they actually do. Here's the simplest rule I have ever found. If someone didn't say no, the conversation isn't over. That's it. No ghost stories, No emotional interpretations, just math. Another fear we need to kill is this idea of being annoying. Let me say this as clearly as possible. The average person is not sitting around thinking about you. They're thinking about their job, their kids, their inbox, their problems. Your follow up is not the disruption you think it is. Half the time, it's actually helpful. The problem is how most people follow up. Just checking in, bumping this, circling back again. That does feel annoying because it adds no value and it puts no pressure on them and you. Good follow up adds context. It sounds like something a normal human would say. This came up and made me think of you. Quick update on what we talked about. Didn't want this to get buried. You're reopening the door, not knocking louder. This is why follow up is perfect for small business owners. You don't need fancy software. You don't need automation. You don't need a 14-step sequence. You just need a reminder system, consistency, and less emotion. Follow up is the lowest effort, highest return sales activity most owners ignore. And here's the part that should sting just a little. If you're doing outreach but not following up, you're wasting your work. The hardest part is starting the conversation. Follow up is just continuing it. Sales aren't found, they're finished. This feels harder than it is because sales feel heavy. Follow up feels awkward, and awkward things get avoided. But avoided things don't disappear, they compound. That's why you feel behind even when you're busy. If you're listening to this and thinking, I can name 3 people I should follow up with, good. That means this is already working. Now let me talk about the simplest system I've ever seen actually get used. You do not need a full CRM overhaul. You do not need automation software. Most owners don't use that stuff anyway. You need one place where conversations live and one rule for what happens next. That's it. Follow up doesn't fail because you don't know what to do. It fails because you can't see it. Here's what actually happens. You talk to someone. It's a good conversation. They say, let me think about it, or circle back, or now's not the right time. And you tell yourself you'll remember. You won't. Not because you're irresponsible, because your brain is already full. If a conversation lives in your head, it's already dying. That's why I am obsessive about visibility. At Perchmer, every active conversation lives somewhere I can see it. For me, it's the 25 open board. It's on a wall in the front of the office. 25 active conversations. That's it. Not leads, not maybes, conversations. If it's not on the board, it doesn't exist. If it exists, it has to move every 7 days. That alone changed how we sell. Now let's answer the question everyone asked. How many times should you follow up? More than you would think. Most owners follow up once, maybe twice, and then quit. Following up 4 to 6 times over a reasonable period is normal, especially in B2B, especially with busy decision makers, especially when nobody's job is to respond to you. You're not chasing, you're staying present. Silence is not feedback. Silence means they forgot. If they meant to respond later or something more urgent popped up, it does not mean they hate you. Your brain lies to protect you from discomfort. Don't let it. Let me give you another real example. We had a deal at Perchmer where the client went quiet after pricing. I assumed it was dead. I almost removed it from the board. I followed up one more time. Turns out they were waiting on internal approval. They thanked me for checking back in. They ordered. That deal existed because I didn't quit early. Follow-up is easier than outreach. You already have context. You already have permission. You already talked. If you're doing outreach but skipping follow-up, you're doing the hardest part and skipping the easiest win. That's backwards. Here's the simplest rhythm that works. You talk. You follow up a few days later. You follow up again the next week. You follow up once more a couple weeks later. That's it. No daily nagging, no weird pressure, just presence. If they say no, great. You have clarity. If they don't, the conversation stays alive. This feels scary because follow-up forces uncertainty. You might get ignored. You might get a delay, but the discomfort of following up is temporary. The discomfort of not following up sticks around. Most deals aren't lost. They're abandoned, not on purpose, quietly. The owner got busy. The follow-up slipped. Someone else stayed in touch, and they got the business. This is how follow-up fits with your daily outreach. Some days your 10 outreaches are new conversations. Some days they're follow-ups. Both count. Both move the business forward. The goal isn't novelty, it's movement. That's why I track conversations, not leads. Leads are abstract. Conversations are real. You can't control when someone buys. You can control whether a conversation moves forward. That clarity alone reduces stress. And this is exactly why I built structure for myself. Because doing this without structure sucked. That's why $0 coaching exists. Not because I wanted to be a coach, because I needed guardrails. And that's why the 30-day jumpstart exists. Because most owners don't need more ideas. They need accountability and a place to put the work. If you follow up consistently, your confidence improves before the sale. Because you stop guessing, you stop replaying conversations in your head. You know you did your part. You don't need better scripts. You don't need better closing lines. You need consistency. If someone is offended by a polite follow up, they were never your client. Once follow up is fixed, sales stop feeling mysterious. You stop saying sales are slow. You start saying, I know exactly where things stand. Clarity replaces anxiety. That's why I push this so hard, because I've seen revenue increase without more marketing, more hours, or more stress. Just better use of conversations you already earned. Simple beats smart. Most small business owners don't need better strategies. They need fewer leaks. Follow up is the biggest leak. You don't have a sales problem. You have conversations you didn't finish. And that's good news because you can fix that starting today. Follow up isn't annoying. It's how business actually gets done. Start today.